American people.
Beverly, of course, Ronnie sort of stole the show, if you will. He, captured the spotlight in that famous press conference now where, he talked about the president's health and the media tried to hit him from every single angle. I mean, he became something of a superstar in a different way, so he's not going to be necessarily new to everyone.
Yeah, I thought he did extremely well in that press conference. I think it's always important to have a good communicator and somebody who can handle questions. And I think of all the cabinet changes, this is probably going to be the least controversial as far as who's being outed. I think when you look at the VA, it's pretty straightforward that this is a campaign promise that Trump gave on the campaign trail. People are concerned about the health care of veterans. So I'm glad to see he's almost taken his own advice of legislation that's been passed, the VA accountability bill, talked about needing to fire people, and so he fired the top guy saying, hey, we're going to move you out, we're going to move someone new in, and I think it's going to be a good choice for them.
Yeah, I think we're all hopeful, and I think we all agree a move had to be made, so no dissension there. So I want to shift now because we had some great news today. In fact, what I'm calling a double whammy, great developments from the Korean Peninsula. We had the meeting with Kim Jong-un with Xi Jinping in China. The Chinese now saying that North Korea has pledged to denuclearize in return for China's continued support. Of course, this is Trump. The Trump administration is striking big deals. They've renegotiated our trade deal with South Korea, which is agreed to reduce the amount of steel that they export to the United States. They're going to allow more U.S. cars to be sold into their country, and they've done some other adjustments that a lot of people didn't think could happen. And I got to tell you, I think, Tammy, this all comes back to one thing. Tough negotiations. Tough negotiations. The kind of negotiations that President Trump took a lot of heat for in the media, I think already yielding dividends.
Yeah, and also a president who will act, somebody who's not just a lot of hot air. And President Trump has proven. And even if it is the convenience sometimes of people believing that he's a kind of rogue, that nobody controls him, that's beneficial. That's helpful. I would say, though, while the South Korean news is terrific, we're going to see more of that, a lot of caution regarding China. Obviously, North Korea has been lying their way through the last quarter of a century, along with China being a partner with them. I don't know if this is going to be any different. Remember, the moment they're able to deliver one of their weapons, one of their nuclear weapons, then all bets are off. They are this close. They have relied on the partnership with Iran for now over a decade or two. They were the ones helping with the Syrian nuclear reactor. This is not going to suddenly change overnight, and this is why I'm particularly thrilled that John Bolton is now advising the president and is in the White House, because John Bolton understands what the murderers of Otto Warmbier really are like, and that we've got to be still cautious.
Well, there's no doubt about it. I mean, everyone's taking this with cautious optimism, but that's an optimism perhaps that wasn't around a month ago, DeRoy.
Absolutely.
And I think, listen, South Korea, for instance, they're going to limit their steel exports. I thought a steel tariff was the worst thing in the world we can do. They're going to increase the imports of U.S. vehicles. They're going to eliminate this thing called country of origin, which essentially allowed de facto discrimination against American products in China. They're going to increase U.S. drug imports there. By the way, we continue our 25% tariff on their pickup trucks through 2041. So this is the kind of deal that, to me, perhaps the framework for a deal with China and NAFTA.
It could be. I think there's a lot to be said about these one-on-one, these bilateral agreements around these huge multilateral agreements where if you want to do anything, it's like getting the United Nations together to sit down and decide, gee, what are we going to do about this one matter, and then debate it and talk about it and vote on it and so on.
Well, they usually vote to meet again.
Exactly. Yeah, they vote to go to lunch, then decide at lunch when the next meeting will be. Exactly. Whereas I think something like this is much more direct and get more concrete results. As for the security situation with North Korea, I would use 3 words of the past versus 3 from today. Lead from behind under Obama versus peace through strength under President Trump. He's put in strong people like Pompeo, like John Bolton, as Tammy mentioned. ISIS has shrunk down to 2% of its previous territory. Tremendous increase in defense spending, and I think all those things have led Kim Jong-un to come to the table.
Beverly, I got to tell you, I agree. I just an amazing amount of news coming out of the Korean Peninsula. More we'll see what happens, but it seems to set the stage now for this meeting in an even more constructive manner, a more focused manner, because North Korea, if indeed this is the statements that they've made, the question now is what do they want in return?
Well, I don't know if you can believe what North Korea says, and I'm not sure you can believe what China says. So I hope it's true that this diplomacy has led to North Korea talking about denuclearizing the region. I hope that's the case, but I do strongly caution against meeting with somebody who is the worst human rights violator in the world to date, or at this point of time. I want to be careful about not making sure that he's not at the level we see other presidents across this world. I have some concerns about treating him that way. I'm hoping it leads to good policies moving forward, but I think we have to be careful about giving him this recognition.
Of President Trump meeting with Kim Jong-un?
I'm skeptical of it. I want to make sure that the rhetoric that President Trump has when he meets with him is not met with, he's a strong leader. He has said that about Kim Jong-un in the past. He needs to make sure that he's very clear about his rhetoric, that what Kim Jong-un does is horrific to the people who are under his regime, and he shouldn't be treated in the same light as we see other leaders. He is a dictator. He's a human rights violator, and I think we have to question whether or not we should even bring him to the table.
Brett, what do you think?